The fluorescent lights in Lakewood High's D-wing hallway flickered just enough to make Madison Clark feel like she was walking through a dream. Not a good dream. The kind where you know something bad is coming, but you can't move fast enough to stop it. She adjusted her backpack and kept her eyes on the scuffed linoleum tiles, counting the cracks. 17, 18, 19. Hey, scholarship girl. Madison's stomach dropped. She didn't need to look up to know who it was. Brock Hartley, captain of the lacrosse team. Son of Jonathan Hartley, CEO of Hartley Pharmaceuticals, the company whose name was engraved on half the buildings in this town. Brock always traveled with his pack. Tyler Moss, who laughed at everything Brock said, even when it wasn't funny, and Sienna Vale, who filmed everything for her social media accounts. Madison kept walking. That was the strategy her mom taught her. Don't engage. Don't give them ammunition. Just walk. But Brock stepped directly into her path. Up close, she could smell his expensive cologne mixed with the faint scent of energy drinks. His smile was wide and empty. I asked you a question, Brock said, tilting his head like he was genuinely curious. Do they teach you to ignore people where you come from? Madison finally looked up. Excuse me. I need to get to class. Class? Brock repeated, glancing back at Tyler and Sienna. You hear that? She needs to get to class. Like she actually belongs here. Madison tried to step around him, but Brock shifted his weight, blocking her again. A few other students slowed down in the hallway, watching. Some pulled out their phones. Madison's chest tightened. This was how it always started. Small. Public. Designed to humiliate. You know, Brock continued, his voice dropping just enough to sound almost friendly. My dad pays for 6 full scholarships at this school. 6. Wonder if you're one of them. I'm not on scholarship, Madison said quietly. Really? Brock's eyebrows shot up in mock surprise. Then why are you here? I mean, look around, Madison. This isn't exactly a place for ... People like you. The words landed like a slap. Madison felt heat rise in her face, but she forced herself to breathe slowly. She'd dealt with this before. At her old school. At summer camp. At the grocery store when a woman asked her mom if she was the housekeeper. But knowing it was coming didn't make it hurt less. People like me, Madison repeated, her voice steady even though her hands were shaking. What does that mean, Brock? Brock shrugged, that infuriating smile never leaving his face. You know what I mean. Madison did know. She'd known since the first day she walked into Lakewood High 2 months ago, one of only 12 black students in a school of 800. She'd known from the way some teachers looked at her when she raised her hand, like they were surprised she had the answer. She'd known from the way guidance counselors asked if she needed help with her coursework. Even though she had a 4.2 GPA, but knowing didn't make it easier. Let her through, Brock. The voice came from behind him. Madison looked past Brock's shoulder and saw Jenna Park, a junior who sat 2 rows ahead of her in a P chemistry. Jenna's arms were crossed, and her expression was unimpressed. You're blocking the entire hallway. Brock turned, his smile faltering for just a second. Mind your business, Park. It is my business when you're making everyone late, Jenna shot back. She looked at Madison. Come on. We'll be late for Brennan's class. Madison hesitated, then stepped forward. This time, Brock moved aside, but as she passed, he leaned in close enough that only she could hear him whisper, "This isn't over." Madison kept walking, her heart hammering in her chest. Jenna fell into step beside her, not saying anything until they turned the corner into the science wing. Thanks, Madison said quietly. Jenna shrugged. Brock's an idiot. Everyone knows it. Everyone knows it, but nobody does anything about it. Yeah, Jenna's voice was tight. That's the problem, isn't it? They walked in silence for a moment before Jenna added, He's been worse lately. I think it's because his dad's company is under investigation or something. I heard my parents talking about it. Something about price gouging on insulin. Madison nodded but didn't respond. She didn't care why Brock was the way he was. She just wanted to survive the school day without another confrontation. But as she slid into her seat in a P chemistry and pulled out her notebook, Madison caught Sienna Vale staring at her from across the room. Sienna's phone was in her hand and she was typing furiously, a small smirk playing on her lips. Madison's stomach twisted. She knew what that meant. By lunch, there would be a post. Maybe a video. Maybe just a caption. Something designed to make her feel small. She opened her notebook and tried to focus on the periodic table Mrs. Brennan was projecting on the board. But all she could think about was Brock's whisper. This isn't over. And she knew, deep in her bones, that he was right. The cafeteria at Lakewood High was a carefully organized hierarchy. Seniors claimed the tables near the windows. The lacrosse and football teams had their own section near the vending machines. Theater kids clustered in the far corner. And Madison Clark sat alone at a table near the emergency exit, eating a turkey sandwich her mom had packed that morning. She didn't mind eating alone. At least, that's what she told herself. It was easier this way. No one to disappoint. No one to ask awkward questions about why she'd transferred schools mid-year. No one to pretend they didn't notice when Brock walked by and said something just loud enough for everyone to hear. But today felt different. The cafeteria was louder than usual, a buzzing electric energy that made Madison's skin prickle. She kept her head down, focusing on her book, The Hate You Give, which felt a little too on the nose, but was the only thing keeping her grounded. Then she heard her name. Not loudly. Just a whisper that rippled through the tables like wind through tall grass. Madison glanced up and saw clusters of students leaning toward each other, phones out, scrolling. A few of them looked at her, then quickly looked away. Madison's chest tightened. She pulled out her own phone and opened Instagram. The first post on her feed made her stomach drop. It was a photo of her. From this morning, standing in the D-wing hallway with Brock looming over her. The caption read, "When you're not wanted, but you still show up. Know your place." The post had already been shared 37 times. The comments were worse. Who even is she? Scholarship kid trying to fit in. She doesn't belong here, LO. Someone should tell her this isn't that kind of school. Madison's hands shook as she scrolled through the comments. Some were vague. Some were explicit. All of them stung. She closed the app and shoved her phone back into her pocket, but the damage was done. Her appetite was gone. Her hands felt cold. She stood up, grabbed her backpack, and headed for the exit. But before she could reach the door, someone stepped in front of her. Sienna Vale. Going somewhere? Sienna asked, her voice dripping with fake concern. You barely touched your lunch. Madison didn't respond. She tried to step around Sienna, but Sienna moved with her, blocking her path. Did you see my post? Sienna asked, tilting her head. I think it's getting a lot of engagement. You're kind of famous now. Move, Madison said quietly. Or what? Sienna's smile widened. You gonna cry? Run to the principal? Good luck with that. Principal Ashford is on the Hartley Foundation board. Guess whose family funds that? Madison's jaw clenched. She wanted to say something sharp, something that would wipe the smug look off Sienna's face. But she knew better. Anything she said would be twisted, recorded, turned into another post. So she said nothing. She pushed past Sienna and walked out of the cafeteria, ignoring the laughter that followed her. Madison didn't stop walking until she reached the library. It was quiet there, almost empty except for Mrs. Kaminsky, the librarian, who was shelving books in the back. Madison sank into a chair in the farthest corner and pulled out her phone again. The The post had 63 shares now. More comments. More strangers weighing in on whether she belonged. Madison closed her eyes and took a slow breath. She thought about her mom, who worked double shifts at the hospital just to afford this neighborhood, this school, this chance. She thought about her little brother, who looked up to her like she was invincible. She thought about all the times her mom had said, "You're stronger than they think. Don't let them see you break." But Madison was tired. Tired of being strong. Tired of being the target. Tired of pretending like it didn't hurt. She opened her messages and typed, "Mom, can you pick me up early? I don't feel well." Her mom responded almost immediately, "On my way. Hang in there, baby." Madison put her phone down and stared at the ceiling. She didn't cry. She wouldn't. Not here. Not where someone might see. But when her mom's car pulled up 20 minutes later and Madison climbed into the passenger seat, the dam finally broke. She sobbed into her hands while her mom held her, not asking questions, just being there. And when Madison finally caught her breath, her mom said quietly, "Tell me everything." So she did. She told her about Brock, about Sienna, about the post and the comments and the feeling of being invisible and hypervisible at the same time. She told her about the whispers and the stares and the way teachers looked away. When things got uncomfortable, her mom listened. And when Madison was done, her mom's expression had shifted. The softness was gone. What replaced it was something harder, sharper. Something that made Madison sit up a little straighter. "Okay," her mom said, her voice calm but edged with steel. "Now we fight back." And Madison believed her. Grace Clark was not a woman who made idle threats. She was a registered nurse with 15 years of experience in the busiest emergency room in the city. She'd seen violence, trauma, and injustice up close. She knew how systems worked. More importantly, she knew how they broke. That night, after Madison went to bed, Grace sat at the kitchen table with a legal pad and a pen. She wasn't a lawyer, but she didn't need to be. What she needed was a plan. First, she documented everything. She saved screenshots of Sienna's Instagram post. She took photos of the comments. She recorded timestamps. She wrote down every incident Madison had shared, dating them as accurately as possible. Brock's hallway confrontation. Sienna's public humiliation. The teachers who looked away. Principal Ashford's convenient unavailability whenever. Grace tried to schedule a meeting. Then she started making calls. The first call was to Lakewood High's main office. She left a voicemail for Principal Ashford, her tone polite but firm. "This is Grace Clark, Madison Clark's mother. I need to schedule an urgent meeting regarding harassment my daughter is experiencing. Please call me back by tomorrow morning." The second call was to the school district's superintendent's office. She left a similar message. The third call was to her cousin, Marcus, who worked as a civil rights attorney in the city. He answered on the second ring. "Grace? It's late. Everything okay?" "No," Grace said. "I need your advice. My daughter is being bullied, and the school is doing nothing." Marcus listened as Grace explained the situation. When she finished, he was quiet for a long moment. "Have you documented everything?" he asked. "Yes." "Good. That's your ammunition. Now, here's what you need to do. Request a formal meeting with the principal. Bring the documentation. Make it clear you're willing to escalate this to the district level if necessary. Schools hate lawsuits. They hate bad press even more. Use that. What if they still do nothing? Then we go nuclear. File a formal complaint with the state's Department of Education. Contact the local news. Make noise. But Grace, you need to be ready for pushback. The Hartley family has money. They have influence. This won't be easy." Grace's jaw tightened. "I don't care if it's easy. I care that my daughter is safe." "Then you're already halfway there," Marcus said. Call me if you need anything. I mean it. Grace thanked him and hung up. She sat in the quiet kitchen for a moment, staring at her notes. Then she picked up her phone and opened the school's parent portal. She clicked on the section labeled File a Formal Complaint and began typing. By the time she finished, it was past midnight. But Grace didn't feel tired. She felt focused, determined, ready. The next morning, Grace drove Madison to school, but didn't drop her off at the front entrance like usual. Instead, she parked in the visitor lot and walked Madison inside, her heels clicking sharply against the polished floors. Where are we going? Madison asked nervously. To see Principal Ashford, Grace said. Madison's eyes widened. Mom, I don't think I do, Grace said firmly. Trust me. They walked into the main office, where a secretary with frosted hair and reading glasses perched on her nose looked up from her computer. Can I help you? I need to see Principal Ashford, Grace said. It's urgent. The secretary's smile was polite but dismissive. Do you have an appointment? No, but I left 2 voicemails yesterday requesting one. Since I didn't receive a call back, I'm here in person. The secretary's smile tightened. Principal Ashford is very busy. I can schedule you for next week. No, Grace interrupted, her voice calm but unyielding. I need to see him today, now. The secretary opened her mouth to protest. But at that moment, the door to the principal's office opened, and a tall man in his 50s with silver hair and a navy suit stepped out. Principal Richard Ashford. Is there a problem? He asked, his tone measured. Grace turned to face him. Yes, there is. My daughter is being harassed, and your staff has done nothing to address it. I need to speak with you immediately. Ashford's expression didn't change, but something flickered in his eyes. Irritation, maybe. Or calculation. Mrs. Clark, I understand your concern, but we have procedures, and I followed them, Grace said, holding up a folder thick with printed screenshots and documentation. I've called. I've emailed. I've left messages. Now I'm here. So unless you'd like me to take this directly to the superintendent or the press, I suggest we talk. Now. The air in the office went still. The secretary's fingers froze over her keyboard. Ashford's jaw tightened, but after a beat, he stepped aside and gestured toward his office. Come in. Grace followed him inside, Madison trailing behind her. The office was spacious, with floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking the school's front lawn. Ashford's desk was immaculate, not a paper out of place. Framed photos of him, shaking hands with local politicians and business leaders, lined the walls. Ashford sat behind his desk and folded his hands. What seems to be the issue? Grace didn't sit. She opened the folder and placed the first screenshot on his desk. This is a post made by one of your students, Sienna Vale, targeting my daughter. It's been shared over 100 times. The comments include racist remarks and threats. Ashford glanced at the screenshot but didn't pick it up. Social media disputes are outside the school's jurisdiction. Is harassment? Grace asked. Because this happened during school hours, on school property, and involves your students. That makes it your jurisdiction. Ashford leaned back in his chair. Mrs. Clark, I understand you're upset, but teenagers can be cruel. It's part of growing up. We can't police every interaction. Cruel? Grace's voice was sharp now. Principal Ashford, my daughter is being systematically targeted because of her race. This isn't teenagers being teenagers. This is harassment. And if you continue to ignore it, you're complicit. Ashford's expression hardened. I resent that accusation. And I resent having to be here at all, Grace shot back. But here we are. So let me be clear. I want an investigation. I want the students involved held accountable. And I want assurances that my daughter will be safe in this school. If I don't get those things, I will escalate this. Do you understand? Ashford stared at her for a long moment. Then he picked up his phone and pressed a button. "Mrs. Kim, please send in the vice principal." A minute later, a woman in her 40s with short dark hair and wire-rimmed glasses entered. Vice Principal Laura Kim. She glanced at Grace and Madison. "Our expression neutral. Mrs. Clark has raised some concerns about student conduct," Ashford said smoothly. "I'd like you to look into it. See if there's any merit." "Of course," Kim said, her tone professional. She looked at Grace. "I'll need copies of your documentation." Grace handed over the folder without hesitation. "Everything's in there. Dates, times, screenshots, witness names. If you need more, I have more." Kim nodded and left the office. Ashford stood, signaling the meeting was over. "We'll be in touch," he said. Grace didn't move. "When?" "Within the week." 2 days, Grace countered. "I want an update in 2 days. Or I'm contacting the superintendent." Ashford's jaw tightened, but he nodded. "Fine." Grace turned and walked out, Madison following close behind. Neither of them spoke until they were back in the car. "Mom," Madison said quietly, "do you really think they'll do anything?" Grace started the engine and looked at her daughter. "Honestly, I don't know. But I'm not giving them a choice." And as they drove away, Grace felt something shift inside her. She wasn't just fighting for Madison anymore. She was fighting against every institution that had ever told her to be quiet, to wait her turn, to accept things as they were. This time, she wasn't backing down. 2 days passed, and Grace received no update from Lakewood High. No phone call, no email, nothing. On the 3rd day, she sent a formal email to Vice Principal Kim with a copy to Principal Ashford and the district superintendent. The subject line read, "Follow-up. Harassment investigation, immediate response required." By the end of the day, she still had no response. So Grace made another call, this time to the local news station. "Channel 7 News, this is Amanda." "Hi, Amanda. My name is Grace Clark, and I have a story you might be interested in. It's about systemic harassment at Lakewood High School and an administration that's refusing to act." There was a pause. Then Amanda's voice sharpened with interest. "Tell me more." Grace did. She explained Madison's situation, the social media posts, the lack of response from the school, and the Hartley family's influence over the administration. She kept her tone measured, factual, and calm. She didn't need to be dramatic. The facts spoke for themselves. "This is exactly the kind of story we've been looking for," Amanda said. "Can you come in for an on-camera interview?" "Yes," Grace said without hesitation. "How about tomorrow at 3? I'll be there." When Grace told Madison about the interview that evening, Madison's face went pale. "Mom, no, please. This will make everything worse." Grace sat down beside her daughter on the couch. "Madison, I know you're scared, but staying silent isn't protecting you. It's protecting them. They're counting on you being too afraid to fight back. We can't let them win. But what if it doesn't work? What if they just come after me harder?" "Then we keep fighting," Grace said firmly. "And we make sure everyone sees it. Bullies thrive in the dark, Madison. We're about to turn on every light in the room." Madison didn't respond, but after a long moment, she nodded. "Okay, but I'm coming with you." Grace blinked in surprise. "To the interview?" "Yes. If we're doing this, I want to tell my side of the story too." Grace's throat tightened with pride. She pulled Madison into a hug. "Okay, we'll do it together." The next day, Grace and Madison sat in front of a camera at Channel 7 studio. The interviewer, a woman named Kelly Russo, was professional but warm, putting them both at ease. "Madison, can you tell us what's been happening at Lakewood High?" Kelly asked gently. Madison took a breath and began to speak. She talked about the hallway confrontation with Brock, the social media post, The comments. The teachers who looked away. Her voice wavered at times, but she didn't stop. She told the truth. When it was Grace's turn, she laid out the timeline. The complaints that were ignored. The meetings that never happened. The administration's refusal to act. Why do you think the school hasn't responded? Kelly asked. Because the Hartley family funds this school, Grace said bluntly. And as long as that money keeps coming, they can do whatever they want. My daughter isn't the first student to be bullied at Lakewood High, but she's going to be the last one ignored. The interview aired that evening. By the next morning, it had been shared thousands of times online. #JusticeForMadison began trending on Twitter. Parents from other schools shared similar stories. The comments section exploded with outrage. And for the first time since this ordeal began, Grace felt like they weren't fighting alone. But she also knew this was just the beginning. Because 2 hours after the segment aired, her phone rang. It was a number she didn't recognize. Hello? Mrs. Clark, this is Jonathan Hartley. Grace's grip on the phone tightened. Mr. Hartley, I saw your interview, Hartley said, his voice smooth and controlled. I think we should talk. In person. I'd like to resolve this matter privately before things escalate further. Grace's instincts screamed at her to say no. But she also knew this was an opportunity. Fine. Where and when? My office. Tomorrow at 10. I'll be there, Grace said. And I'm bringing my attorney. There was a pause. Then Hartley chuckled softly. Of course. I'll see you tomorrow, Mrs. Clark. He hung up. Grace sat in silence for a moment, then called Marcus. He wants to meet, she said. Good, Marcus replied. That means he's nervous. Let's go see what he's really after. Grace Clark walked into Jonathan Hartley's office the next morning with her cousin Marcus by her side. The office was on the 23rd floor of a gleaming high-rise downtown, all glass and steel and intimidation. A receptionist with a tight smile escorted them into a conference room with a view of the entire city. Jonathan Hartley was already seated at the head of the table, flanked by 2 men in expensive suits. His lawyers, Grace assumed. Hartley himself was in his late 50s, with silver hair, sharp blue eyes, and the kind of confidence that came from a lifetime of getting exactly what he wanted. Mrs. Clark, Hartley said, standing and extending his hand. Thank you for coming. Grace shook his hand briefly. Let's skip the pleasantries. Why am I here? Hartley smiled, but it didn't reach his eyes. Straight to the point. I respect that. Please, sit. Grace and Marcus took seats across from Hartley and his lawyers. One of the lawyers, a man with slick-back hair and a Rolex, slid a folder across the table. Mrs. Clark, we understand your daughter has had a difficult experience at Lakewood High. That's regrettable. But we believe this matter can be resolved without further publicity. Grace opened the folder. Inside was a settlement agreement. She scanned the first page and felt her stomach turn. They were offering $50,000 in exchange for her silence. The agreement included a non-disclosure clause, a withdrawal of all complaints, and a stipulation that Madison would transfer to another school. Grace closed the folder and pushed it back across the table. No, Hartley raised an eyebrow. You didn't even read the full offer. I read enough, Grace said coldly. You want to pay me to go away, to pretend this never happened, to let your son and his friends continue terrorizing other students without consequence. The answer is no. Mrs. Clark, one of the lawyers interjected. $50,000 is a generous offer. More than generous, considering there's no legal liability here. No legal liability? Marcus spoke up for the first time, his voice sharp. Your client's son harassed my cousin's daughter on school property. The incident was documented. There's a clear pattern of behavior that the school administration ignored. That's liability. And if you think we won't pursue it, you're mistaken. Hartley leaned back in his chair, studying them. "Mr. Clark, is it?" "Marcus Clark." "Mr. Clark, I admire your passion. But let's be realistic. You're going up against one of the largest philanthropic foundations in the state. We fund schools, hospitals, community programs. If you push this, you'll be vilified. People will say you're attacking a family that's done nothing but give back." "Give back?" Grace's voice was ice. "You think writing checks absolves you of accountability? Your son is a bully. Your money has enabled him. And now you think you can buy your way out of the consequences." Hartley's expression hardened. "Mrs. Clark, I suggest you think very carefully about your next move. Lawsuits are expensive, time-consuming, and they rarely end the way you hope. But if you insist on pursuing this, I'll make sure you regret it." Grace stood up, and Marcus followed. "Is that a threat, Mr. Hartley?" "It's a reality," Hartley said smoothly. "Goodbye, Mrs. Clark. I hope you make the right choice." Grace and Marcus walked out without another word. In the elevator, Marcus let out a long breath. "He's scared," he said. "Good," Grace replied. "He should be." That evening, Grace and Marcus sat in her living room, strategizing. Marcus had already filed a formal complaint with the state's Department of Education. He'd also reached out to a colleague who specialized in civil rights cases. "We need more than just Madison's testimony," Marcus said. "We need other students to come forward. If Brock Hartley has been bullying Madison, he's been bullying others too. We need to find him." Grace nodded. "How do we do that?" "Social media. If Madison's story resonated with people, there are probably other students or parents who've had similar experiences. We just need to give them a platform to speak up." Grace thought for a moment, then pulled out her phone. She opened Twitter and typed, "If you or your child has experienced bullying at Lakewood, I and the administration did nothing, please DM me. Your story matters. Hashtag Justice for Madison." She posted it and waited within an hour. Her DMs were flooded. Parents sharing stories of their children being harassed, threatened, humiliated. Teachers who've been silenced when they tried to report incidents. Students who transferred out because they felt unsafe. Grace read through each message, her anger growing with every word. This wasn't just about Madison anymore. This was systemic. A culture of silence and complicity that had been allowed to fester for years. She forwarded the messages to Marcus, who began compiling them into a formal case file. By the end of the week, they had testimony from 12 families. 12 students who'd been failed by the same system that had failed Madison. And then, Grace got a message that changed everything. "Mrs. Clark, my name is Olivia Tran. I was a student at Lakewood High 2 years ago. I was bullied by Brock Hartley and his friends. I tried to report it, but Principal Ashford told me to toughen up. I eventually left the school. I still have emails from that time. If they can help, I'm willing to share." Them. Grace's hands trembled as she read the message, emails, documentation, proof that this had been happening for years and that the administration had known and done nothing. She responded immediately, "Olivia, thank you for reaching out. Your story matters. Can we set up a call?" Olivia agreed, and the next day, Grace and Marcus spoke with her over Zoom. Olivia was 19 now, a college freshman with dark circles under her eyes and a quiet strength in her voice. "I've been following Madison's story," Olivia said, "and I kept thinking about what happened to me. I was so ashamed back then. I thought it was my fault. But seeing Madison stand up made me realize it wasn't. It was never my fault." "It wasn't," Grace said firmly. "And what happened to you was wrong. But Olivia, if you're willing to share your story, we can use it to hold them accountable." Olivia nodded. "I'll do it. I don't want anyone else to go through what I did." Over the next 2 weeks, Marcus built a case that was impossible to ignore. He filed a formal lawsuit against Lakewood High School, Principal Richard Ashford, and the Hartley family. The lawsuit alleged systemic negligence, failure to protect students, and retaliation against those who spoke out. The local news picked up the story. National outlets followed. #Justice for Madison became #Justice for Lakewood, and suddenly, the entire country was watching. Grace Clark had become the face of a movement, and she wasn't backing down. The school board called an emergency meeting. The Lakewood High gymnasium was packed. Parents, students, teachers, reporters, and concerned community members filled every seat. A long table at the front held the 7 members of the school board, their faces tight with stress. Principal Richard Ashford sat off to the side, his expression unreadable. Vice Principal Laura Kim sat beside him, her hands folded tightly in her lap. Grace Clark stood at the podium, a folder of documents in front of her. Marcus sat in the front row, ready to support her if needed. Madison was beside him, her face pale but determined. The board president, a middle-aged woman named Carol Jennings, called the meeting to order. "We're here tonight to address allegations of bullying and administrative misconduct at Lakewood High School. Mrs. Clark, you have the floor." Grace stepped up to the microphone. Her voice was steady, clear, and unyielding. "Thank you. My name is Grace Clark, and my daughter, Madison, is a sophomore at Lakewood High. For the past 3 months, she has been harassed, humiliated, and threatened by students at this school. When we reported these incidents to the administration, we were ignored. When we escalated our concerns, we were dismissed. And when we went public, we were offered money to stay quiet." A murmur rippled through the crowd. Grace continued, "But this isn't just about Madison. In the past 2 weeks, 12 other families have come forward with similar stories. 12 students who were bullied, threatened, and failed by this school's administration. Some of those students are here tonight, and they're ready to tell their stories." One by one, students and parents stood up and spoke. A freshman who'd been shoved into lockers. A junior who'd been called slurs in the hallway. A senior who'd been cyberbullied so badly she'd attempted suicide. Each story was more heartbreaking than the last, and with each one, the board members' faces grew grimmer. When the last student sat down, Grace returned to the microphone. "Principal Ashford told me that bullying is part of growing up, that the school can't police every interaction. But what I've heard tonight isn't normal teenage behavior. It's abuse. And it's been allowed to continue because the administration prioritized money and reputation over the safety of students." She turned to face Ashford directly. "You failed these children, and you need to be held accountable." The gymnasium erupted in applause. Ashford's face flushed, but he said nothing. Carol Jennings banged her gavel. "Order, please." She looked at Ashford. "Principal Ashford, do you have a response?" Ashford stood slowly, his expression tight. "I have always acted in the best interest of this school and its students. These accusations are based on incomplete information, and incomplete?" Grace interrupted, her voice sharp. "We have emails, screenshots, witness testimony. What more do you need?" Ashford's jaw clenched, but before he could respond, Carol Jennings raised her hand. "Principal Ashford, we will be conducting a full investigation. Until that investigation is complete, you are suspended from your duties." The crowd erupted again. Ashford looked like he'd been slapped. He opened his mouth to protest, but Jennings cut him off. "This meeting is adjourned." As the board members filed out, Grace felt a hand on her shoulder. She turned to see Madison, tears streaming down her face. "We did it," Madison whispered. Grace pulled her daughter into a tight hug. "Yes, we did. But we're not done yet." Because Grace knew that Ashford's suspension was just the first step. The real battle was still ahead. 2 weeks later, the investigation concluded. Principal Ashford was terminated. Vice Principal Kim was placed on probation. And the school board announced sweeping reforms, including mandatory anti-bullying training, an anonymous reporting system, and an independent oversight committee. But the biggest victory came when Brock Hartley was expelled. Not because of the lawsuit, but because 3 more students came forward with evidence of harassment. The Hartley family issued a public apology and withdrew their funding from Lakewood. Grace Clark stood on the front steps of the school, watching as workers installed a new sign, Lakewood High School, a safe space for all students. Madison stood beside her, her hand in her mother's. "Do you think it'll be different now?" she asked. Grace looked at her daughter and smiled. "I think we made sure it will be." And for the first time in months, Madison smiled back.